Rainbow Six Siege, like any other competitive game, has been having problems with players being toxic, and apparently the devs are not quite happy with that, as any developer would not be happy with that. So what they're doing is they're actually going to start banning people for racial slurs, homophobic speech, and other hateful language. Michael here with another topic video. Now, obviously, banning people for hateful speech is a thing that's been around for quite a while and on several different games. However, this one is a little bit special because normally they rely on reports. And so when somebody is being hateful or they're throwing around homophobic slurs because they're a douchebag, then basically somebody reports them and then they get banned. And that's generally how it works. But that normally has some sort of human intervention with it. But this system is supposed to be automatic. And the way it's going to work is basically if you say these sorts of things, commonly and out of what would be considered team fair kind of speech, then it would actually just outright ban you without any sort of human intervention. So basically, if you were like, oh, hey, and you were saying naughty words over and over again, you were calling people particular names that you probably shouldn't be, then you basically just get banned automatically from the game based off of an automated system. There's a lot of caveats about this, but I'll go ahead and talk about this a little bit later. But first, how does the system actually work? Well, basically, it just monitors your text chat. Now, this doesn't help voice chat whatsoever, and when I've played Siege, I've run into quite a bit of stuff back in the day in the voice chat that was definitely not things that I wanted to hear, but obviously, it's online gaming, it's whatever. I just kind of live with it at this point. I don't care. I know that people that end up running around with racial slurs, they're no older than like 13 or 12 or whatever, so I just kind of, whatever, their parents didn't raise them right, and that's fine, whatever. Everyone can be a dirtbag if they want to be. And so I just kind of ignore it. But of course, this isn't always the case, and it does rise to kind of a feeling of toxicity. Even if you end up kind of being like me and just kind of like not really caring about it, it does raise this sort of question of like, this kind of feels toxic. And so basically they're just monitoring the chat logs for basically whoever's saying these things way too often, and they're just automatically going to start banning them. These bans can be anywhere between 2-day all the way up to a permanent ban. So basically, if you run around saying racial slurs and homophobic hate speech all the time, then you're probably going to get banned, and you probably freaking deserve it. Now, personally, I'm obviously for this. However, there are some caveats that could end up happening. A lot of people have brought up the point to where basically there is, playful banter, and there are certain things that people would say that would sound hateful inside of a vacuum, but obviously within a competitive team game, there is some kind of going around there. Somebody was like, hey, what if I went to my teammate and he pulled off a good clutch move, basically, turning the game around when he was solo, and the game looked unwinnable, but then he ended up winning, and he'd be like, wow, nice fucking job, dude. Like, that would be legitimately something you could say. And so basically we've gotten a dev response saying that the system would not ban somebody for this speech, but obviously it hasn't really been implemented. It was just recently implemented, or it's going to be within this week. And so we haven't really seen where that is headed. And so we haven't actually seen whether or not that is going to be the case. However, I do assume that they will be smart enough to actually have it there. This is actually not a new system. However, the system did originally require some human intervention. However, now they're going to be letting it off the rails and letting it kind of ban people. And so the chances are, if they're smart about it, and I assume that they are, Rainbow Six Siege has been doing extremely well in a lot of different ways. And so if they're smart about this, then they will probably have it so that certain types of hate speech would be categorized and it would be sort of added in. Now, obviously, racial slurs are pretty easy. There was absolutely no reason to say a racial slur. Even if you say it in your normal speech and you think it's fine within your friend zone, I've been known to say, hey, well, no, I've not been known to say racial slurs, but rather I've been known to say that it's okay to use racial slurs within your friend group if that's your sort of speech pattern. If that's what you guys accept, then sure, every community is going to have something that's different acceptable. I personally do not allow it, and I absolutely ban everybody who uses any sort of hate speech within my own Discord, and so I definitely am not okay with it. However, if you want to go in your PMs and talk with your best friend and be like, yo, what's up, Bill, and do all that type of stuff, freaking go for it. However, this is an online community when other people that are outside of your friends group are playing. Therefore, you shouldn't be saying them no matter what, and this is something that I've said over and over again on this channel, so I won't harp on it too much. But basically, all they're doing is asking you to watch your speech and just be a little bit more careful with what you say. And there are people out there who are legitimately homophobic and who are legitimately racist. And by having people run around using this sort of language, it promotes other people to act that way. Even if they're not actually homophobic or they're not actually racist or yada yada, it still ends up promoting that behavior. And people kind of use it as a justification tool to end up kind of shifting around their hate, and it causes a toxic environment. And although a competitive game is already going to have somewhat of a toxic environment, just because that's how we are as humans. When we get competitive, we get a little bit aggressive. And even with my own friends, we'll be playing something like League of Legends, and we'll be like, oh, hey, man, you just stole my freaking kill. What the hell, man? That sort of thing. And, it's all fun in games, and it's all friendly, but there's a certain line that we have to draw, especially when you're within a game that's going to have people that you don't even know on there. Now, this isn't going to affect anything like, let's say, voice chat. Voice chat is still going to rely on personal reports, and so there is no accidental sort of typing thing here. There is no accidental, like, oh man, normally I'm talking about it with my friends and stuff like that. If anybody remembers the PewDiePie whole controversy and thing, which I actually sided with PewDiePie on that site, on the argument, but basically, he just accidentally said a racial slur, and he said, in my normal friends group, that's what I would say and stuff. Well, I think that's a shitty thing to do. It obviously makes sense when you're in a voice setting because you can talk before you think. However, when you're typing within text chat, you can't really type without thinking. You have to type it completely out. And yes, some people do type some pretty freaking fastly, but at the same time, you are typing it down and you can see it. You can read it. You should have the thought process of being like, hey, should I be saying this thing? And if you say even slightly no, then maybe you shouldn't type it. And what they're doing is basically just making it so that, if you are actually typing these things out, you have thought about it. And therefore, you will be punished if you are doing something that is not considered all right. And they're not going to be banning people for saying slurs. They're not going to ban people for being like, oh, well, like curse words and things like that. Like, it's not like the common stuff isn't going to be banned. It's going to be like the bad stuff, the stuff that people shouldn't be talking about no matter what. The stuff that, if you said it out in public, you would possibly offend somebody, and somebody might even kick your ass if you end up walking down an alleyway. Like that sort of stuff, that stuff is going to be banned. Everything else seems to be pretty much fair game. It's like, yeah, whatever. We know it's a competitive game, so they're going to be running around with slurs. I don't think anybody, especially since the game itself has slurs within it, I don't think anybody has a problem with anybody speaking about slurs. I don't think that's the problem here. The problem is that people are spreading hate speech and kind of normalizing it, and this has been a problem in a lot of other games. And I would actually like to see the system in a lot of other games. I was just talking with my friend before recording this. I was like, I would love games like League of Legends to implement this to automatically, because currently in the current system, yes, they do ban for that stuff, but they have to do it a lot, and they have to be reported for it every single time. I've seen people going through matches over and over again, just running around. They'll start off their match with a bunch of hate speech, and they'll just do nothing but hate speech the entire game. But because people don't ban them, maybe because they're still playing or something along those lines, even if you ask them to stop, they still don't end up getting banned. I've seen names that are level 30 plus, which means they've put in at least 200 hours into the game, that have racial slurs in their name. And yes, you can technically change your name whenever you want, but it does cost some currency. Because, of course, it's a free-to-play game if you're talking about League of Legends. But in other games as well, other games I've seen it as well, to where they'll have racial slurs in their name and they just don't get banned because nobody reports it. And so having these automated systems, as much as people hate chat filters, I think this is a better solution, because they're not banning people for just saying it once or twice, because, there is going to be the innocent slip-up, or maybe, somebody has a funny joke that just requires it to be said, or maybe it's like perfect for the moment or something along those lines. Like, there are legitimate reasons to end up using it because, hey, that's how speech works. Speech has many different ways to be used, such as curse words, for example. I don't direct my curse words at people very, very often. And if I do, it's generally because, one, you pissed me off extremely badly and you'll freaking know that. Or number two, it's for a joke, or because it's like, fucking really? Like that sort of thing, And so slurs are not always bad. Oh, hey, a purple weapon. Slurs are not always bad. And I think that racial slurs and homophobic speech can be the same way, such as, people say gay all the time. When I was a kid, gay was always assumed as like, oh man, that's gay, that's sort of bad thing. Although, I don't do that anymore, but it is still a speech pattern that people end up using. And so this system actually, I think, will end up working out as long as they end up doing it smartly and they don't go too overboard with the way that they end up using it. Because if it's like, oh, you said gay 3 times and then they get banned, then, well, that's just kind of ridiculous, because some people do use gay in their normal speech pattern. Calling someone gay is not technically a bad thing unless you're using it in an offensive way, because somebody may be a homosexual and then you just use that as a definitive word. I don't know, that's what I called all my gay friends, and they're perfectly fine with it. And so in my, friend pattern, that would be okay to say. However, obviously not everyone's going to agree with that, but this system, since it's not going to be, using it on every single word, it's not like a chat filter where they're just going to end up censoring out these words, which I believe Siege does have a chat filter. So if you don't want to see any of it, you could technically use it. But even, actually, that's an interesting point. I wonder if it would go through a chat filter, because I'm pretty sure that game has a chat filter. And so I'm wondering if somebody turned on the chat filter, if it would actually affect what they see, even if it censored their words. Because if it, like, you had a chat filter on your side, and then you said something, if it would censor it on their side. While I was talking, I just jumped into a hole, and that was absolutely hilarious. Yeah, I just completely got sidetracked, because I never even thought about that. But yeah, regardless, they're not banning you for just saying the word. I think that's one of those cases where they're actually like looking at it and yeah, they're like, hey, you've said this word like 20 times in the last 5 matches. What's going on? And some people have suggested that they might have to do some like, human intervention here and there, especially when it comes down to reports. And I doubt they're going to change their report system. I mean, if you report somebody for inappropriate speech, they'll obviously be able to look into that and be like, oh, hey, yeah, this person's saying some pretty nasty stuff, even if they're not using racial slurs. So it's still important to report people that you see using these sorts of words that you don't want to see in the game. And I'm not talking about censorship or anything like that. Like somebody says like, oh, I don't know, like Halo sucks or something like that. And it's like, I like Halo. And then you get mad at them and report. Like, don't do that. That obviously won't do anything. But, things like, they're calling you names and things like that, still report them because it is important to still get that through. And this automated system won't be able to pick up everything. And since it is, one of those cases that we have actually had the developer say, if we actually get reports, we can actually look into it much quicker and have quicker action taken, which means, God damn it. Now, I'm just going to say here now. So it just means, if they end up getting reported, they can just, solve the problem quicker. And so it'll just get rid of the problem even faster, which would be a good thing. And obviously, these people will not be getting permanent bans immediately. I doubt they're going to be like jumping from like, oh, hey, you just said this word 7 times and they're going to ban you immediately. I have a feeling it's going to be, kind of incremental if you keep doing this thing over and over again, or like, let's say you're really obsessive about it, they'll probably throw you like a 15-day ban if you're really, really bad. But chances are you won't get permanently banned unless you get, shot at basically multiple times. And it's like, oh, hey, I've been pretty bad and you probably freaking deserve if you get a permanent ban from this thing. But of course, we're going to end up seeing how it plays out in the future because this system just got implemented or is just going to be implemented. I don't remember if it was a week from now or if it was like last week. Oh, starting next week, they say. Okay, so on the post it says starting next week, and that came out a few hours ago. And so, yeah, so it'll be coming in the next week. I'll be interested to see where it goes because I want to see this followed up with more games because I really hate seeing a lot of toxicity. It's one of the reasons why I don't like playing League of Legends a lot of times. I have to be in the right mood for it. And, 1 or 2 toxic games, and I just jump out. And it's the same exact thing with any competitive game. Although, I might have to actually reinstall Siege as well, because I've been thinking about it. They have that whole outbreak mode coming out, and this might be a good time to end up pushing for a better community, considering they're putting in a PvE mode sort of thing going on. They do have Terrorist Hunt, though. I do like that mode anyways. Yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Sorry, I was a little bit rambly here. If you like my content, you can always end up checking out our community Discord. We actually have a Discord called The Broken Chat Box. We play games all the time and stuff along those lines. You can also end up checking out my website and my other styles of content. I do game development, and I also do some hacks and things like that. I've started making videos on those, but that take a while to kind of show up. You can also end up checking out my other styles of content. Obviously, leave your thoughts on this stuff in the comments below. I screwed up my outro. I was going to go make sure to like and subscribe and then talk about the comments afterwards. And I'm trying to change up my format a little bit, and I'm having a little bit of fun with it. But there you go. Where is this guy? Oh, he's over here. He is chasing around this box, and I want to murder him. Ugh, so gay. Anyways, like I said, I'll see you guys in the next video.